Morning guys, Rumana here from Bonsai with Rumana. Hope you guys are well. For joining in once again. It's another work week behind our backs. So today I just want to discuss a few things. So this week there's been quite a lot of chat around black monkey thorns and also if they are deciduous trees, semi-deciduous, and if leaves fall off, and yeah, also all about the scientific name. But yeah, I'll get into that just now. Then I just wanted to talk about two maintenance things that you do in winter. So I'll be showing you guys quickly how to clean moss from the base of the tree, especially junipers and pines, because during winter the moss tends to stay wet for quite long, and that can cause your bark to rot, and also it can cause fungus to grow at the base of your trunk, which can cause your tree to rot at a certain point. So yeah, so let me, before I go over, I just wanted to let you guys know that if you want to go onto my website, it's bonsaiwithrumano.com. I've added in a calendar, and under the calendar, I've added in my live streams that I'm doing every Saturday. So from the end of June, I'll be adding in more dates as the lockdown stages move on, so that I can keep you guys informed about what's happening in the bonsai community. So before I show you guys how I take off the moss from this trunk, let me just show you guys the small tree that I'm just gonna show you in the demo part of this stream. I'm gonna show you guys how I work on this small it's a stone pine. Just wanted to show you guys how you wire smaller trees, and also how that part works. So it's very nice, very small tree, about what, say 20 centimeters. I've been growing it for quite some time now, and I removed some of the needles closer to so that I can just add in that wire for that demo part. So let me switch over to the other camera and then I can show you guys. Okay, so what I did now is I use a toothbrush for this part of the demo. So let me just move past the tree. So here you guys can see that there's quite a bit of moss growing around the base of the tree. So a lot of times people like the moss growing next to the soil and next to the trunk, but during winter what I normally do is I remove all the moss surrounding the trunk, because here you can see what happens now is that the moss grows into the trunk and into the bark in between the cavities, and then what happens is it starts rotting there and it stays wet for longer. So you want this part to dry off very quickly. So what I'll do now is I'll just want to get the tweezers over here. So all I do is I just take away just rub it away, because obviously the small roots, you don't want to damage that root. So you take off all the excess moss. Moss is not something that you have to worry about too much, because it grows back very easily. So let me just show you how I remove it from the soil first of all. So first remove these from the bottom. So you can just rake it away with your tweezers. And this is a very important thing, and I think when guys see the trees on shows, they see the moss, and what they don't keep in mind is that the moss is not on the tree throughout the year. So moss can be added just before a show, or it can be added for summer, or you can wait for it to grow. But moss is not a necessity for bonsai. So it's a nice to have, but you have to maintain it like any other part of bonsai. So you have to take care of that. I'm going to show you how I remove that. So just remove all this moss over here. That's quite a bit of moss, and our winter has started and days are beginning to get shorter and shorter, and it's colder every night, so the temperatures are definitely dropping. So the moss tends to grow faster, and also what I've found now is that a lot more is starting to come up in my pots, and that's obviously because there's a lot more rain and a lot more dampness in the soil, so the seeds take very easily in winter. because our summers are a bit drier. They don't grow that quickly. It tends to die and turn yellow in winter. Yeah, so that's that part removed. So then what I do is on the trunk, I just take an old toothbrush and I just rub it off. Just brush over it so it actually comes loose. Just careful not to remove the bark, because this flaky bark just easily. So you can see it quite high up the trunk. Okay, so that part's removed. Move the smaller and try to get as much of the moss off as possible. You don't need to do everything at once, but try and get it off as much as possible, because this is something that you're going to have to do. So yeah, you're going to have to come back, remove some of the moss on a daily or weekly basis. So here you can see again, there's moss growing up into the roots. You want to moving all of this. Yeah, so what I was explaining earlier was that there was quite a bit of debate on our club. So let me just get the club WhatsApp channel regarding the black monkey thorns and the monkey thorns, and just finding out which of the species are actually deciduous trees. And yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm going to write an article about that, but it seems like it depends on where you live and the climate in the environment where you, or the region that you're in. Because I know with some of my trees, the leaves stay on until the leaves fall off, and it's almost like the new leaves pushes out the older leaves. But it was said that we should also trim your trees, sorry, not trim, but fertilize your trees, just as the tree knows it should start throwing off the old leaves and push out the new growth. So that's something quite interesting. So I'm very keen to use that as part of my new routine, especially when we're going out of winter this year, just to see if it makes a difference and if it's something that I will adapt and start using on my trees a bit more often. So yeah, so there you can see that part's done. So I've removed all the moss over there. So this tree has quite a few thorns, so yeah, let me just turn so you guys can see moss at the back here. So I haven't removed any moss from this tree yet. The first time removing moss. So but I can actually show you guys 2 or 3 weeks from now how this moss has grown back. So moss, moss is one of those interesting things where I think 2 years ago at the Japan Day in Stellenbosch at Libertas, and they actually showed us how moss reacts. So moss never dies completely. So what it does, it goes dormant, and as soon as it receives, it's growing again. So moss is a very, very interesting plant. So it doesn't die out, it just dries out completely, and as soon as it gets water, it will rejuvenate again. So yeah, it was quite interesting, because I think most of us, we tend to think that moss, as soon as moss dries out, that it should die in winter. But moss grows throughout the year, or it stays dormant throughout the year, and then as soon as it receives water, it actually starts rejuvenating and it starts growing within a few minutes. That's the interesting thing. That's something that so it doesn't take long. So as soon as, because what the guy did out a big part of a big pot full of moss and left it without water for almost a month, just to demonstrate it. And as soon as he sprayed it with water, the moss started opening up, and within a few minutes it looked like it never died. So that you have to keep in mind with moss. So even if it's dry, it's not completely dead, it will rejuvenate. And there's also different types of moss. So also with a landscaping type of bonsai, we always like to add in moss into our designs. So try and plant in different types of moss. Don't just add in one species, try different types of species so it actually looks like a landscape and not just well-groomed grass. Okay, so there I've removed all of the moss around the trunk, and also off, I just brushed it off the bark. And just remove some of these weeds as well while I'm at it, so it's all done at once. There we go. There it is. So that's this tree. I removed all the moss now. So now I'll just show you guys a juniper quickly. I have a big old juniper that I've put this down. Let me just move this tree to the side. Sorry, it's quite big, so I'll just place it on the table to the side. And then I'm just going to grab. Let me just. Space is quite tight over here. So here's the juniper. So with a juniper, I'm actually just going to angle it up so you guys can see. So there's the same thing. Just add in a few blocks on the back. You guys can actually see. Yeah. So there you guys can see that there's also. So I'll just have to angle it every time I turn it around. You guys can actually see the moss growing on this tree. So this tree also has a bit of dead wood. So you always try and keep the dead wood clear of any moss. I'll just remove all the weeds before we start with. So normally what you do is after you clean the dead wood, you would also apply lime sulfur. But I don't apply lime sulfur in winter, because what happens is it dries off, and when it receives water, it starts running down and going into, and that could cause damage to your root system, and your tree could die. So because lime sulfur is poisonous to the trees, but we apply it to keep the wood as long as possible. So what I'll do now is I'll just remove this. So here you can see here's already like this. Let me just show you guys the camera. Not going to pick it up, but there's like pieces of there, and it's different types of moss, and it's swelling up and it looks ugly, and it's very, very damp around this trunk. So if this rots off, what will happen, this part of the tree will become weak and it can break off easily. I'm also just remove all of these moss around it to prevent that from rotting, because the deadwood features are nice, but you don't want, you want to restore them and keep them as neat as possible. So you need to remove all these dead moss. And then what I also do is in winter is I take my tweezers and I just loosen up the soil just to make sure that the drainage holes aren't blocked at the bottom, and that the soil actually allows the water to filter through freely, because junipers and trees that don't like a lot of water. It doesn't back up. So what I did is, if you guys want to, I've uploaded a video I think yesterday, just showing you guys how I move my trees around when I'm watering them, just to make sure that right and the right amount of water, because there are some trees that don't need a lot of water now in winter, because they're not using any of the water, so they're not growing, especially like the deciduous trees. So you want to keep the soil moist, but you don't want the soil to be drenched in water, because then you just have root rot. So some of the trees, like I think baobabs, a lot of the guys move them out of the outdoor areas and they move them into garages and stuff like that to keep them away from water, so that they don't receive a lot of water during winter. There's a lot of admin and logistics when it comes to those type of trees, because obviously they're not in the environment where they come from. So you want to make sure that you recreate the environments that the trees thrive in before you. So if you want to prevent all that logistics, it's nice to use trees that actually come from your region, because that way you can make sure that your climate is correct for your trees. That just helps with creating the microenvironment, because then you don't have to spend so much money and time, full-time jobs, and doing the small maintenance tasks can get neglected, and then the trees will suffer. But the nice thing about bonsai is, like with any other plants and trees, is they tend to be for, so it might take some time before you actually start seeing the damage caused by neglecting maintenance, but it's better to be safe than sorry and just do those tasks. I know some of the tasks like cleaning moss of trunks is not appealing to everybody, but it's definitely we should do often. I'm just taking this brush to brush off all this dampness over here. Yeah, so that's it. So now you guys will see the bottom part here, the base of this tree till there is still very, very damp. So I'll leave this tree outside, or I can even move it inside just for a couple of hours before I take it back out, or I can just move it to an area where it doesn't receive as much rain, just to make sure that the trees don't rot at the base, because that's the last thing you want. Working on a tree for years and then it rots and then it breaks off. So there you can see that part's all done now. So my deadwood feature is all cleaned up, and now I just need to allow it some time to dry. I'll move it back out again. So yeah, that's it. So this tree has been wired a few times, and I removed all the wire earlier this year just to make sure that the tree recovers. So I just leave this tree for now and then come back to it as soon as the tree looks like it's growing. Just move up the other small demo tree. So there's the little demo tree. Hope you guys can actually see it. I'll move it a bit closer. That. There we go. Now you can see, let me just move the other camera as well so you guys can actually have two angles on that. I'm gonna move. I do apologize for this delay. This one, that. Second, yeah. Okay. Now I'm just gonna switch to this screen over here, and then you guys can see. Okay, so now you guys will be able to see it from two angles, so from this side and the smaller part over here. Okay, let me just grab this. I'm just going to use the tweezers just to remove some of the dead needles. Just cut out some of the. So I might as well just remove all of them. Not going to do any harm to the tree; they're already dead. Remove some of these smaller pieces before I start applying the wire again. This tree has been wired before. Now that the tree is actually growing again, I'm thinking of just changing up the design a bit more. That. Just get the scissors over here. So for me, it's actually very nice to work on smaller trees, because it's a lot more delicate, and there's a lot of fine work involved with the smaller trees. The bigger trees, they tend to be a bit more difficult to work. Bigger gauge of wire, and when you're bending a branch, you need some assistance. And I think I just like smaller trees. That's my personal preference. But if you like bigger trees, it's each for its own. So you more than welcome bigger trees. Okay, so there is the needles. Most of the smallest ones are removed. Just cut off the parts where it actually. Yeah. Now I'm just going to apply wire to this tree. I'll see if this will. Yeah, this wire is big enough. Straighten up the wire a bit. Good. Just checking the stream. We've been having internet issues here at home, with it being cloudy and rainy. For some reason it's just affecting the internet at home. So okay, so what I'm going to do, part of the container, just to be able to wrap the wire closer to the trunk and also bend the tree down a bit more. So let me just remove that. This is cut into it. As you can see, I have shortened the spot. Used to be deeper, And because you water bonsai trees regularly, you don't need a container. You just need it to have enough moisture and nutrients for the tree to survive in between tree feeding and watering sessions. So you don't need a deep pot for trees to survive. Remove all the There we go. This one. Just remember to apply the wire in the direction that you actually want to bend the tree. Get straight into the ground, just to anchor it. And then because this is such a small tree, you have to be careful when applying the wire, because it's very, very easy to damage the roots. Actually hold the tree securely, because applying wire to this tree, you can easily, especially with a thicker wire, pull it out of the pot. And also you can tear the roots apart if you actually, so I'm just kneeling down, if you actually damage, if you drop trunk and it comes out of its pot very, very easily. Just getting brace the tree. Grab the tree tightly. Apply the last couple of layers once more. Get grip on the tree. There we go. Remove all of the foliage out of the way. And I will be removing some of the foliage later on, but for now, I'm not going to remove any of the foliage as it's winter. This. Okay, so now I'm going to be rewiring the smaller branches. And they really don't need a lot of wire. Quite thin. This is always fun. Find the end of these wires. There we go. Get the right path over here. Oh. Apply it to the other branch as well. Done. Side. Use a small offcut. It's so easy to wire these small trees. Really don't need a lot of wire. Tie that off. Move the excess. There, those first two branches are done. Third and use this offcut. Make sure that you wind the wire very tight around the branches. Then now, because this is such a small tree, I'll be moving it into the, I'll leave it where it is now, but as soon as the temperatures start heating up again, what I'll do is I'll actually move it away the sun and just move it into a shaded area. So because this wires will definitely just kneel down again. Sorry, this tree is very small. My hand almost covers this entire tree. The trees are a bit more of a challenge. I like it a lot more because it helps you work on your smaller motor skills, and once you're comfortable with wiring smaller trees, you can move on to bigger ones, and you can wire your bigger trees in more detail. Plus side. These two, the top rods left. Open this up. It's getting warm now. It's been very cold this last week, and there was a sudden change in temperature. Caught keeping my eye on the weather now. It was very windy. Every now and then I have to actually drop my shading nets on the sides to make sure the trees don't blow off the benches, especially the ones with bigger canopies. Daily job, just checking that the wind don't blow trees off benches. What I saw now the other day with my gutter is there was a hole in one part of the gutter, and through the night it actually spewed out water from the one container. So yeah, just side note, just keep your eye on your trees, especially now, because you tend to think, oh, it's fine, receiving enough water, I don't need to water them, but there's other things you need to keep in, especially with water spilling out of containers. What I do is I normally just fill those up with soil again. There we go, those two are done. So there's 1, 2, 3 more branches to go. This way. There's nice small branches. So this growth on this tree is all juvenile growth. I have seen like this, at least one long mature branch over there, but I've trimmed this tree a lot. Juvenile growth tend to come back on stone pines. I'm going to style this, and I'm going to leave it until the wire starts almost biting in and the branches stay in place. Then see how this tree develops. Just remove this branch here. I don't see any purpose for that. Okay. Give it some. Sorry about that, the dogs are barking outside. Somebody walking past. It's been funny, they've been quiet every Saturday for the last 4 weeks, and today of all days, speak up and call it that. Last wire, and then I'm gonna that's done. Okay, let's just wrap this a bit further. That's all done. Move this to the side. And it's also, yeah, so whenever you're done with these wires, just make sure that you actually tie something around them. If they start not making knots and turning on each other, you will struggle to find the end parts on those wires. Okay, let me just go here. Okay, so what I've decided to do with this little tree is to actually use this branch over here as a the apex, and then I'm going to be doing is using the current apex as a side branch over here. So you'll see that this trunk that goes up all the way here, the same thickness, but what will happen is as soon as this becomes the apex of the tree, this over here will start thickening up, and once that's thickened up, this will be your new apex, and that will be your branch coming to the side over here. So I'll just move the branches into place, and then you guys can see how that works. Wondering now if I should grab my. Oh, no. This is the front part over here. Change this tree around. I'm just going to kneel down again. Okay, so let's take this part. Let's just go. I'm going to have movement, so I'm just going to bend my trunk into this side first, just to shorten up the gap from the base of trunk, just to make sure that there's some movement in there. Okay, so that will lead you into this first branch over here, which will be first branch. There you go. These are all at the same level over there. I might just have more. And take it back. Side. See how this shortens up the tree a lot more. I'll show you guys just now how that works. But it's nice with these trees with the small thin trunks. You can actually put a lot of movement still in the tree and move the branches in place. Get a lot more dramatic movement. So I'll do is I'll just remove the smaller branch on this side. I'll just remove the wires over here. This one will be this. Okay. Will be the new apex. Okay. Compact. And it was. These branches I said remove. No. It's good. Smaller. To the twist is a bit more flat. Okay. There we go. Now you can see that the tree, that's the front over there. So you have first branch to this side, second branch over here. So the tree is way shorter than it was before I started. Trunk moving to this side first. Then you have your first branch over here. It goes up, your back branch, comes this way just to add in a bit more depth into the design. And then you have this one going off to the side over here, and then you have your new apex forming over here. So what will happen now is up to that side, give this branch some needed nutrition, and then move up and then move to this part first. So the highest part of the tree will receive the most sap, so that part will be stronger now, and then these will gradually just in size, and also this will thicken up this part a lot more. So that's what we're aiming for now, is for this part to be thickened up a lot. So there you have it. Here's this tree all styled. Let me just turn it around for you. You can actually see. So some of these twigs are growing up and they fluff now. I'm not going to winter. You don't want to cut too much of the smaller branches, otherwise they're not going to harden off for winter. But here you can see a small tree all done. There's a lot of movement in this tree, and it did. Here we go. Yeah, all done. So guys, I just want to move this camera back up again. Sorry about that. Been a lot of moving around today. Just get into that shot. Oh. Move on to the wrong. There we go. Sorry about that. It's just moving today. So that's it for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed the quick demo, and then also the demonstration of how to remove the moss. And hopefully next week I'll have a lot more things to talk about. This week was a bit short, spent a lot of time working, and I didn't have enough time to prep a lot of more trees. And then also what's happening now, it's becoming winter. So during winter, a lot of the trees are actually going into dormancy. So there's not a lot of work to do now on the physical trees, like styling them or anything like that, but there's a lot of taking away the moss, cleaning up the enclosures and stuff like that. So winter is actually a time that you can use to prepare your soil for spring, and it's also a good time to prepare your pots and clean them up and look for slugs. Slugs is another thing you have to just, what happens is because they don't have any shells, they go under the pots and they sit in the drainage holes. So also make sure that you clean up all the drainage holes during winter. Just put your finger under there, just move the pots to check that all no holes are blocked. And also if they're out there, just cut them out and remove them, and make sure that your drainage holes are nice and open. That's something that you just need to do in winter. Just check that all the drainage holes are open. Make sure that there's not a lot of moss on the sides of the pots, and also growing on the trees trunks itself. So that's what you can do to prepare yourself for winter. And then just start reading up a lot on bonsai, so it's nice to know when trees start waking up. So the 1st of June will be on Monday. So the first trees that will signs of growth would be the Celtis sinensis and Celtis africana. So it would be good to prepare growing medium for them, to buy pots now for the growing season, and then also just make sure that all the leaves on the trees are removed. Comes out that there's not a lot of energy still stuck in those trees tips, and you can remove all of those. So make sure that you are prepared for repotting in July. So July, end of August would be repotting for Celtis sinensis, and Celtis africana, which is Witstinko. That you geared up for that, because once you start with repotting, you have to make sure that you stick to a schedule. And there's September, most of the other trees, but there are a few books out there that you can read up a lot on what time to repot. What I'm going to try and do is also on that calendar of mine, I'll try and add in when I'll be doing certain tasks, so then you guys can see when I'm doing my stuff, and then you can plan your repotting, trimming, wiring, on based on that calendar. So I'll get a few guys to help me set up that calendar. If you guys want to, you can go over to my website and look for the calendar. And then also thank you very much for joining me today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any feedback on the stream, please scan the code, and then I will be able to look at all that comments, and then on my feedback on my Facebook channel as usual. If you like what I'm doing, please subscribe to the channel below. Hit the notification button to make sure that you receive all the notifications. As you guys know, I'm live every Saturday at 10 a.m. So I hope to see you guys again, and have a great weekend. Hope you guys stay